Good, happy Monday evening, April 11, 2022. I'm Riley King. Welcome to this Monday evening edition of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. Let's begin right now. First step, wife of Good Samaritan hit on Everett Turnpike says husband suffers serious injuries. Man charged in connection with crash due in court. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9.
That this entire morass of American education has one thing that is.
Jean Barbara Shamley says her husband Mark doesn't remember anything of the incident on the Everett Friday morning that nearly took his life. Now, Mark Shamley stopped to assist another motorist who had been injured and involved in an accident. It was about 5:45 Friday morning on the Turnpike in Merrimack when he was struck. According to his wife, the accident left him with multiple injuries, including head trauma, a fractured pelvis, along with 10 fractured ribs. There was also damage to his chest cavity that required a stent to be inserted. His wife says it was very much in Mark's character to stop Friday and see if he could assist the other motorists, calling her husband a helper and something he has done all his life. She adds that the support they're getting from family and friends is enormous. Barbara says she'd also like to thank the DOT worker who came to her husband's aid after the accident, believing that they helped save Mark's life. She's also been told it was a DOT worker who led police to the damaged vehicle that struck her husband. Now, one of the things that has the family concerned is the high cost of the medical bills. So because of that, Barbara has set up a fundraising page to help with those costs. You can find a link to that by heading to our website, WMUR.com. Reporting live in Nashua, Ray Brewer, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. New Hampshire State Rep Rogers dies of cancer. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9.
Members of the State House are remembering longtime Representative Catherine Rogers today. The New Hampshire Democratic Party says Rogers died Sunday after a battle with cancer. The Concord native spent 8 terms in the New Hampshire House. Arrangements have not yet been announced. Rogers was 67 years old.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Man charged in connection with Manchester shooting that left dog dead. Witnesses say dog fired on again as it was trying to crawl away, prosecutors say. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9.
Beltate's Building Supply was to be your first choice for lumber and building products. Our contractor sales team can expedite orders for timely delivery right to your job site with our huge 50-vehicle delivery fleet.
Visit us at beltates.com or any of our 9 locations.
Marco Nieves allegedly shot a pit bull, and witnesses say that dog was trying to get away, crawling through the kitchen, only to be shot 2 or 3 more times. That shooting happened back at the end of March on Orange Street in Manchester. When officers got there, they say they found the dog dead and 6 shell casings on the floor. Court documents say witnesses told police Nieves came to the home after they asked him to return money they had lent him. Nieves faces a slew of charges, including animal cruelty and being a felon in possession of a deadly weapon. He claims self-defense, saying the dog was growling and advancing towards him. Still, Nieves was denied bail at an arraignment today.
I am going to detain the defendant, and I would do it based just on the 3 times felon in possession, being on federal probation, and having a weapon and using it in city property.
Also, during that shooting, someone jumped out of a second-story window at that apartment and was seriously injured. The defense did request an evidentiary hearing. That request was also denied. Live in Manchester, Grace Finerman, WMUR News Now.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Moores announces $750K fundraising haul in first quarter. Chuck Moores is topping the field in fundraising for the first quarter of 2022 in New Hampshire's competitive U.S. Senate Republican primary. The state Senate president is announcing a haul of $750,000 from more than 800 donors, a total the campaign says sets a new GOP record for this particularly quarter, outpacing the $600,000 raised by Kelly Ayotte in 2010. Other Republicans in the primary are now far behind in the race for campaign cash. Kevin Smith brought in $410,000 in the first quarter, and Don Bulldog brought in about $100,000. Bruce Fenton, a libertarian learning Republican and icon of cryptocurrency movement who just jumped into the contest, is expected to largely self-fund his campaign. Incumbent U.S. Senator Maggie Hassan announced a fundraising figure of $4.3 million in the first quarter last week. Moose killed after colliding with car in Carroll. Police said the driver of the car suffered minor injuries when a moose crashed through the windshield. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9.
The whistle from the kettle.
My husband's snoring.
Toilet flushing.
Garbage truck backing up.
First sound I heard.
The first sound I heard with my hearing aids.
It's what I heard the day I got my hearing aids.
Find your beautiful sounds at hearinglife.com.
Well, check out this damage right here. This is the aftermath of a crash involving a moose. Carroll police say it happened around 12:30 this morning on Route 302, just hours ago. They say the driver suffered minor cuts from the broken glass. The moose, though, was killed on impact.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. COVID outbreak in D.C. and around the nation. Let's take a listen to that video from ABC News.
At J.P. Morgan, the only definition of wealth that matters is yours.
More people who attended that gridiron dinner last week now testing positive for the virus as case rates are ticking up across the nation. Chief White House correspondent Cecilia Vega has the latest. Good morning, Cecilia.
Hey, Michael, good morning to you. Yeah, that elite dinner, it's attended by a who's who of Washington politicians and journalists. It turns out it's looking like a major super spreader event here in town. At least 72 positive cases so far, potentially linked to that dinner. We're now talking about New York City Mayor Eric Adams. We're talking about members of the president's cabinet, the Ag Secretary, the Commerce Secretary, even the Attorney General. But look at this. It's not just that dinner. At least 23 lawmakers and administration officials testing positive just in the last week alone. So far, the good news, it seems most, if not all, are experiencing mild symptoms, being vaccinated. But some have had close proximity with the president, including, you can see there, Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The White House says they are taking precautions to keep President Biden safe, including regular testing. He was last tested on Friday. But, Michael, they're now acknowledging that it is a possibility that President Biden could get infected.
Thank you, Cecilia. We're joined now by the new White House Coronavirus Response Coordinator, Dr. Ashish Jha. Dr. Jha, thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Michael. Thanks for having me here.
And we know there are around 70 cases linked to that Washington Gridiron Dinner, which looked increasingly like a super spreader event. Everyone who attended, they had to be vaccinated. Is that not enough anymore?
Yeah, so Michael, you know, what it reminds us is the pandemic isn't over, right? We're still going to see cases of this virus spreading, and we have to continue to be vigilant. We have to continue to be careful. But as long as people are vaccinated and boosted, we now have a lot of treatments available. Put that together, and the good news is no one out of that so far has gotten particularly sick, and that's what we got to be tracking, making sure that when there are outbreaks that we can take care of people and make sure that no one ends up in the hospital or worse.
And House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who spent time with President Biden and Vice President Harris last week, she tested positive on Thursday. And later that day, the Vice President presided over the Senate without a mask. And then we saw a maskless Biden meet with Judge Jackson. Was that risky? And what are the latest CDC guidance on when you need to wear a mask?
Yeah, so there are very strict protocols here at the White House and elsewhere, obviously, for senior officials, including anybody who's had a known exposure as defined by the CDC following CDC guidelines. So I think that is clearly being followed. And I think that's important, right? I think it's important for us to continue to be vigilant, including if you've had an official exposure, to follow the response that the CDC has required.
And we know the Omicron variant BA2, that's led to a rise in cases in Europe. And it is the dominant variant here in the U.S. as well. Well, we've typically followed Europe by a few weeks, and now infections here are on the rise in 21 states. So how concerned are you, and what do vaccinated people need to know about it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Couple of things. And first of all, as you said, we have tended to follow Europe by a few weeks. We are seeing cases rise. We're going to see cases rise and fall. I mean, that's part of the thing. What we know is for BA2, the vaccines are working really well, particularly if you're boosted. So if you're boosted, there are still some breakthroughs, but people are going to do very well. So that's the number one thing people need to be doing, is making sure they're vaccinated and boosted.
And speaking of being boosted, the CDC authorized a second booster for older people, but nearly a third of people over 65 haven't had their first booster. You're now the new White House coronavirus czar. So what are you going to do to make sure that those that are most vulnerable get boosted?
Yeah, it's a great question. It is absolutely essential that every adult who's more than 5 months out get that booster. I mean, that I think is just critical. And as you pointed out to Michael, it's particularly important for older Americans, people who are at higher risk. So I think we need to look carefully at what's holding that back. We need to redouble our efforts. That's how we're going to save lives. That's how we're going to prevent hospitalizations and deaths, is making sure that older, more vulnerable people absolutely get their booster.
We definitely want to save lives. Dr. Jha, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and congratulations on your new job.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and that does it for this evening edition of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. Thank you for tuning in and watching. Have a great evening. Good night and goodbye, everyone.